Bezos Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Shavuos Daf Mem, and we're going to start from Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis, a little bit towards the top, about like 7 lines. We'll play a little catch up, and we'll have to move a little quicker just to catch up, and we might skip a few lines here and there. The bottom line here is we're discussing over here the Shavua called Shavuos Moida B'Miktsas, which means that if a claimant claims you owe me $100 for whatever reason, and the other person says, I agree to 50, but I deny the other 50. So the Torah tells us that the defendant has to swear that he's telling the truth. So we got through the Gemara saying that to swear is a very big thing. I mean, you can't just swear. And we try to scare the guy not to swear, because if he's swearing falsely, and then he can not only ruin himself, he can ruin his family, he can ruin the entire Jewish world. So, so now the Gemara discusses, the Gemara is now discussing what happens when the guy is swearing. Hi, Lewis. We just began. We're on Lamed Tes Summit Bays towards the top. So the first thing the Gemara is quoting from a brisa. Im Oma Eini Jishba. If the person says, I don't want to swear anymore, Poitrinoisa Miyad, we right away let him go and make him pay. We don't want him to change his mind and say, oh, you know what, I'll swear. No, we right away end the case, pay. Vim Oma Hareini Nishba. But if the person says, I want to swear, Ha'imdim Sham, those that are in the courtroom, like get up, they say to themselves, Surah Be'al Ole Rashah Nashim Rashama Elu. Let's get away from these Rashaim. They like sort of make their way towards the exit. And they're calling the Rasha, the person that's going to swear, and the claimant, not just the defendant that's going to swear, the claimant. So that's the Gemara's question. I understand why the defendant is considered like a Rasha because he's swearing, and he might swear falsely. Amai, the one that is making him swear, the claimant, the one that brought the case to court. So what did he do wrong? Why do we call him a Rasha? Fascinating. Kedetanya, we learned in the Brisa. Reb Shimon ben Tarfon says, Shvuas Hashem tia ben shneim. The Torah says that they both are considered to be making a shvuah. The claimant who brought the claim against the defendant is causing the defendant to bring a shvuah. So they're both involved in the shvuah. Melamed shechal shvuah shneim. The punishment, so to speak, falls not only on the defendant, but also it affects the claimant. And Rashi explains why. Look, Rashi says, top of the page, Shishneim nenoshim ba. They both get punished because that the claimant should not have trusted the defendant and given him his money so fast. He should have investigated further. And because he was lazy about that, he caused now a chilul Hashem that the defendant might swear falsely. So you have to do due diligence, and if you don't do due diligence, you're considered to be liable. So, and then we say, we say to him, why do you have to tell him? Oh, you're going to say it in a language based on our understanding, not your understanding. Answers the Gemara, Mishum Kanya de Rava, because of the cane of Rava. There was this guy who owed somebody money, and he said he paid it back. So they said, would you willing to take a shvuah? He said, yes. He asked the gentleman who made the claim, please hold my cane as I say the shvuah. He made a shvuah that he returned the money. As it turned out, in the cane itself was the money. So the shvuah was emes, but he took his cane back. So he fooled people by swearing truthfully, but he misdirected the shvuah. Our understanding was he paid the loan back. So therefore, when we make him swear not the way he understands it, but the way the Bezdin will understand what he's saying. Okay, now the Gemara comes to the crux of what we're discussing over here. Hata'ana shtei kesef. Again, easy way to understand this is if someone claims $100 and the defendant says, I only owe 50, so then you have to swear called moida b'miktsas. You agree partially. Amar Rav said, Kfirash ta'ana shtei kesef. What the Mishnah says, Rav's understanding of the Mishnah is that the claim has to be, let's call it two kesef, $2. And the claim has to be $2.01. And the admission is, I owe you a penny, but I'm denying $2. So the denial part has to be minimum of $2. That's what Rav learns in the Mishnah. Shmuel says, not necessarily. Ta'ana asmishtei kesef. The court case could be about $2 in total. But afila lekofar ela pruta, even if he agrees that even if he agrees I owe you $1.99, 1 penny I don't owe you, Shmuel will still require a person a shvua moida b'miktsas in that case, because Shmuel is very strict. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter what you deny, even if you're denying just 1 penny, you're chayav to make that shvua. According to Rav, the denial itself has to be $2 worth. And of course, it doesn't matter, according to Shmuel, whether you're denying a penny or even if you're agreeing to a penny and denying $1.99, you're chayiv. According to Rav, the denial part has to be minimum of shtei kesef, let's call it $2. And then the Gemara went through on the bottom. The Gemara goes through where Rav got his idea. Rav tried to learn the psukim this way, and Shmuel got his idea. Let's skip down to where the lines get wide. 2 lines from where the lines get wide on Lamed Tesam and Beit. Now we learned in the Mishnah. Shtei kesef. The Mishnah said, let's get it more centered. The Mishnah said, Shtei kesef yesh li biyata. A person said, the claim said, I have $2, you owe me $2. And the person said, Ein lecha biyadi ela pruta. I only owe you 1 penny. The Mishnah says, Potter, you're exempt from shvua moida b'miktsas. So this could seemingly be a good question against Shmuel, because why are you Potter? Why would the Mishnah say you're exempt from moida b'miktsas? You agreed a penny and you're denying $1.99. That's it. My tama labashum dechaser leitana, because you're missing in the denial. In the denial was $1.99. In order for you to be bechayev a moida b'miktsas, you have to deny $2 worth. Utiyuf to the Shmuel, and this would be a refutation against Shmuel. Shmuel says if a guy is asking for $2 and you agree for a penny, and you're just denying $1.99, you should be chayiv a Shmuel. So why does the Mishnah say Potter? Amalach Shmuel. Shmuel will tell you mi savret shava katani. Is the Mishnah talking about the value of $2, and he's agreeing for a penny? Daf katani. The Mishnah is talking about the guy who was requesting specifically silver. Shtei kesef doesn't mean $2; it means two pieces of silver. And the person agreed and said, "Oh, I only owe you a piece of copper." So masha tanu loy haidulay, masha haidulay loy tanu. Whatever the claim was, he didn't agree to, and whatever he agreed to, admit to, wasn't part of the claim. One of the reasons of moida b'miktsas means you have to admit to part of the claim. But if the guy is claiming one thing and you're admitting another thing, you're not chayev a shvua. If that's the case, ema seifa. If the way Shmuel's learning, let's read the end of the Mishnah. Shtei kesef upruti yeshli biyadcha. The person said, I'm asking for you 2 kesef and a pruta. So basically he's asking, according to Rav, $2 and a penny. And ein lecha biyadi ela pruta. The guy says, I only owe you a penny, but I'm denying $2. Chayev, he's chayev to pay. He chayev a shvua. So amrit bishlama shava. If you learn the way the Rav learned that the Mishnah is talking about the value of $2 and a penny, and he's only admitting to a penny. That's why you're liable in a carbon shvua, a shvuas moida b'miktsas, because you're denying $2 worth. If the guy is asking for pieces of silver and he's only agreeing to a copper, why you chayev? Whatever your claim was, he doesn't agree to, or what he agreed to, he's not part of the claim. And says the Gemara, really, it is part of the claim. Midia hatamel or Shmuel, because this is you're explaining Shmuel. If the claim was, for example, wheat and barley, and you admit to, let's say, just barley, Yechayev, because the claim was about wheat and barley, and you agreed to one of them. So here the claim was 2 pieces of silver and a piece of copper, and you admitted to copper. So that's why Yechayev Moed b'mitzvahs. So now Shmuel has a way to learn the Mishnah that the Mishnah is not talking about dollars value, but is actually silver pieces, specifically silver versus copper. The way Shmuel learns the Mishnah probably makes more sense. Midik Tani Sefer, because the end of the Mishnah says, Litra Zav Yeshli Biyadcha. A guy says, I have an ounce, let's call litra an ounce of gold you owe me. And the person says, Ein Licha Biyadi Litra Kesef. I only owe you an ounce of silver. So he asked for an ounce of gold, you're giving him an ounce of silver, Parter, that's no Shvuah. If you're saying that he's asking for specifically gold and you're admitting silver, that's why you're exempt from a shvuah. If he's just asking, and if he meant to say the value of an ounce of gold, so basically he's asking for $3,000, and you're admitting you only owe him $500. Amai patra litra tuvahava, but you're admitting. You're denying, let's say, $2,500, and you're admitting to $500. So why are you potter from a shvuah by the b'mitzvahs? Ella must be mid the sefer dafka. Since the end of the Mishnah, you have to learn pshat that zav means specifically he was asking for gold, and you're giving him silver. So reishanami dafka. So the first part of the Mishnah is also where he was asking for specifically gold, and you're giving him silver, copper. So lemi tehavi tiyufti the Rav. So the way we'll refute Rav, because the way Rav learns the Mishnah, you can't seem to make sense of the end of the Mishnah. And says the Gemara, you could. Amalacha Rav. Rav will say, "Kulam asnisa shava." The whole entire Mishnah you learn that it's value, the value of something. But the end of the Mishnah, yes, I'll agree to you that it means he was asking specifically for silver. Because V'litruzov Shani, since he went ahead and quoted the weight, he said an ounce of gold, so it must be he's looking for the gold itself. And therefore, when the guy says, I only owe you an ounce of silver, that's why he's potter. So I'll agree to you that part of the Mishnah is dafka. He's asking for specifically. We go to Amid, we go to Memo Aleph. Teidal, prove it to you. Tani Sefer, the end of the Mishnah says, Dina Zav Yeshli Biatcha. And the guy says, I have a coin, a coin of gold. I have you owe me a gold dinar. Let's call it a gold dollar. And the person says, I only owe you a silver dollar or a quarter or a dime or a nickel or a penny. Chayiv. Because you're asking, that's all part of the coinage. He's asking for a gold dollar, and you're admitting to a silver dollar or a penny. So if you learn that part of the Mishnah, that really ended the Mishnah, is that it's value, because he's asking for a gold dollar, which is maybe worth $200, and you're admitting to a silver dollar. But if he's asking for gold and you're just admitting silver, according to Rab Shmuel, how are you going to learn that part of the Mishnah? Why are you chayiv? Rab Loza is going to answer on behalf of Shmuel. Here, it is somewhat considered the claim was about coinage, right? So it wasn't specifically a gold coin. The stress is not on the gold, but it's a coin. I'm asking you for a coin. So, and you're admitting that you owe me a coin, albeit not the same coin that I'm requesting. I asked for a gold coin, and you're giving me a copper coin or a silver coin. The kamash malam, the pruta b'chalmat be'isa. And so the point of the Mishnah is that if you agree to a penny, which is a coin, somewhat of the lowest denomination, still that's considered that your defense is within the claim, and therefore you'll be chayav a shvuah. The economy, the ktani, because that's what the Mishnah says. Sha'koil min matbei achas. That the point is that they're all considered part of a coin. The Rav, how does Rav explain that part of the Mishnah? We're not looking for coins; we're looking for value. Shakol din matbei achas. Everything. That's what the Rav will say. Everything has the law of one coin. He was asking for the value of a gold coin, and you're answering him, I only owe you the value of a penny, or the value of a silver coin. And Rab Lazar, who answered Shmuel, Leimed Midisefer Kishmuel Mataretz Reishanam Kishmuel Svirle, since that's Rab Lazar, since he's answering up Rav, does he agree? Since he's coming to answer Shmuel, so would he say that since the end of the Mishnah he answered like Shmuel, he learned maybe the beginning of the Mishnah like Shmuel? In other words, does Rab Lazar agree to Shmuel all around? Loi. He doesn't necessarily have to hold like Shmuel. He could learn the Mishnah, the beginning of the Mishnah, like Rav or Shmuel. Let's go skip down to Tani Rab Chia L'Suya L'Rav. Rab Chia taught a brisa that Mamish said it exactly the way Rav said. Again, according to Rav, the claim has to be $2 and a penny. You agree to a penny and deny $2. If the person says, "Sela li biyadcha," you owe me a sela, and the guy says, "Ein lecha biyadi ela sela chasa beis kesef," I owe you a sela. Let's call a sela a $10 bill. So he says, "You're right. I owe you a $10 bill chasa beis kesef, missing $2. So I owe you I'm denying that I owe you $2. I agree that I owe you $8. Chayev, then you chayev a shvur. Why? Because your denial is still $2. Chasamah, but let's say you said I owe you $9. I owe you. I agree. I owe you $9, but I'm denying that I owe you $1. So then potter, because you not have the denial of base kasef. So Rav holds you need the denial of 2 kasef, and Shmuel holds doesn't matter. You always need you just need a denial of a penny, and you still chayev a shvur. New Gemara. Amar Rab Nachman Amar Shvayitzchak Amar Shmuel. Loishanu, we didn't learn. Ella batanas malva v'aydos loiva. Aval tanas malva v'aydos eidech. The only machlokes is whether you need to have a denial of something, and it has to be a $2 claim and or $2 and a penny claim, but it has to be minimum of $2 claim. That's only by a lender versus a borrower. Avatanas mal, and the borrower was a maida b'miktsas. What happens? Avatanas malva. The Balva says that I lent you 1 pruta, right? No, he said I lent you 5 cents, and then v'ados eid echad, 1/8 says the loiva says I don't owe you anything, and 1/8 comes along and says you owe him 5 cents. Even if the lender says, I lent you a penny, the guy denies and says, I don't owe you anything. And that 1/8 is against him that says, you borrowed a penny. Chayiv, he's liable for shvua. So a shvua, based on the testimony of one witness is enough to obligate the defendant to make a shvua. And it doesn't matter what the claim is, how much was the claim. Even the claim was just 1 penny. My tama, what's the reason? The pasuk says, "Liyokom eid echa beish l'chol oven l'chol chatas, l'chol oven l'chol chatas hu deinikam avakam hu d'shvua." One witness, the Torah says, is not effective to make somebody guilty, but it is effective to obligate a person a shvua. So we juxtapose one witness to 2 witnesses. 2 witnesses. That side decides the case. One witness obligates the defendant to swear. Tanya, we learned to the brisa. Kol makam sheshnayim mechayv v'noismam. If you have 2 witnesses, and they would obligate the person to pay money, and 2 witnesses could obligate a person to pay even 1 penny, because 2 witnesses, nothing is stronger than 2 witnesses. Ein echad mechayv v'shvua. 1 witness could obligate a person to swear. So 1 per witness, it doesn't matter what the claim is. Even if the claim was a penny, if there's 1 witness against the defendant will be liable to swear. Now we learned another din. The Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. We said that in order to be a moide b'miktsas, that you agree to partial, you have to be within the claim. What happens if the claim is two different items? You have a claim of wheat and barley. Those are two different items. And the guy admitted, oh, I only owe you barley. Is that a moide b'miktsas, a partial agreement? So the Gemara says, who said this? Rav Shmuel said this. Chayev, you're obligated to pay. You're obligated in a shvuah. Amalei, Rabbi Yitzchak said to Shmuel, Yasher, that's correct. The Chayin Amar Rabbi Yochanan said the same thing. Rabbi Yitzchak learned in the yeshiva with Rabbi Yochanan as the teacher, and the Gemara always knew that Rish Lakish usually would argue against Rabbi Yochanan. So when Rabbi Yitzchak said, so said Rabbi Yochanan, did he mean to say that Rish Lakish would argue? Michlal the Palik Alei the Shakish, Rish Lakish would argue and hold that chitin and soirim, and you agree to one of them, you're potter, because that's not the claim was wheat and barley, and you only admitted on the barley, but there's no partial admission on the wheat. So Iked de Amri, others say Misha Havashar le Vishasikle, that Rish Lakish was usually quiet when Rabbi Yochanan was speaking, and therefore Rabbi Yitzchak didn't know what Rish Lakish held, and then Rabbi Yitzchak had to leave early, so he never understood, never realized if Rish Lakish would argue against Rabbi Yochanan or not. Iked de Amri, others say Mishtahav v'shasagle. I don't know what the difference is, but Rish Lakish was taking a drink, and therefore he was quiet when Rabbi Yochanan said this din. But it could be after Rabbi Yitzchak left the room, Rish Lakish argued. But the bottom line is, again, a guy, if I ask you, I claim against you $1,000, and you agree to $500, so that makes sense. My claim is about dollars, and you agree to partial of my claim, which is $500. But here, the chiddush is, if the guy claimed two different items, wheat and barley, and the person admitted that he owes barley, so there was no partial admission on each of the items. There's a total admission on the barley. There's a complete denial on the wheat. But since they're part of one claim, it's considered as a partial admission, according to Shmuel and according to this version of Rabbi Yochanan, to require a shvuah. Let's learn just one raya, and then we're going to go to the counter view. Lema Messiah, let us bring a proof. Ta'ani, the Bryce, our Mishnah says, Ta'anu chitin, if someone claims wheat, and then you would admit to wheat, to barley. So the claim was only about barley, and the admission was about, the claim was about wheat, and the admission was only about barley. So the Mishnah says, potter, you're exempt from a shvuah. Rabbi Gamliel says, Rabbi Gamliel totally is always, any admission requires you to swear whether it's part of the claim or not. So Rabbi Gamliel is the outlier of all the opinions here. But let's examine the Chachamim. Ta'ani chitim, the claim was wheat, and the admission was barley, so only then you are exempt from a shvuah. So the Gemara says, it's only because you claimed wheat and you admitted on barley. That's why you're exempt. But if the claim was about wheat and barley, and you admitted on one of them, let's say you admitted the barley and denied the wheat, that's still considered a partial admission, and then chayev, you'll be obligated to a carbon shvuah, you're obligated to swear. So this is a raya to the opinion of Rav Nachman Omer Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. Answers the Gemara, it's not such a ride, not so fast. Boy, not so fast. Hu adin da afil chitin usoirid nami pater. The law would remain the same, that if the claim was wheat and barley, and you just admitted on the barley, the Chachamim would also agree you're pater, because that's not considered a partial claim. So why did the argument just about the claim was wheat and the admission was barley? To show you how powerful Rabbi Gamliel is. Rabbi Gamliel, in this case, there was not even a partial admission on anything. They're talking two different languages. And nevertheless, Rabbi Gamliel says you're obligated on a shvuah, because Ta'ani Chitim, he claimed wheat, and you're admitting barley, so you're talking two different languages. But Rabbi Gamliel says it doesn't matter. You chayiv to swear. So that was why the Brisa said that case, to show you how strong and how extreme Rabbi Gamliel is. But regarding the Chachamim, even in a case where the claim would be wheat and barley, and you just admitted on barley, could be the Chachamim will also hold that you're a potter. Okay, let's just go to Amid Beis, and we'll go to a little bit by the first third, about 10 lines into Amid Beis. So that was the first opinion of what Rabbi Yochanan said. The Gemara says, Rabbi Chia bar Abba Omer Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan something else. If your claim was wheat and barley, and you admitted just to the barley, potter, you're exempt from a shvuah. You're potter, you're exempt from a shvuah. Why? It makes perfect sense. Because you don't have a partial admission on anything. You're totally admitting the barley, and you're totally denying the wheat. So therefore, you're exempt from a shvuah. What would be a case of moed b'miktzah? The guy only asks for, let's say you owe me 10 pounds of wheat, and the person says, I only owe you 5. So I admit 5, and I deny that I owe you 5. That's called a moed b'miktzah. Here, it's not a moed b'miktzah. And that's why this version of Rabbi Yochanan said, you're potter. Says the Gemara of Rabbi Yitzchak Yasha, Rabbi Yochanan. Then we learned that Rabbi Yitzchak said that Rabbi Yochanan was correct by saying you're obligated in a shvuah moed b'miktzah. And says the Gemara, Amaroyim ninu aliba de Rabbi Yochanan. It's a machlekes Amaroyim what Rabbi Yochanan said. In the first version, we learned that Rabbi Yochanan said that you'll be obligated in a shvuah moed b'miktzah. In this version of Rabbi Yochanan, we say you're not obligated in shvuah moed b'miktzah. Let's skip down to another 2 more things, and then we'll stop. Amar Rav Onan, Amar Shmuel. Rav Onan said in the name of Shmuel, the guy claimed that you owe me wheat, and the other person said, "Oh, I owe you barley." Now he knew that the claim was going to be about wheat and barley, and he jumped and admitted to barley. In Kamarim, if we see that he's trying to deceive to avoid a shvuah moed b'miktzah, because he didn't let the first guy finish his claim, chayev will make him swear a shvuah moed b'miktzah, according to the opinion that tanichitim v'sarim v'haydolei b'sarim. We're going to make him swear shvuah moed b'miktzah, even though the claimant didn't complete his claim about barley. In miskavein potter, but if the guy had intention and he just didn't know what the claim was, he just says all I owe you is barley. So, and since the claim was only about wheat, he'll be exempt from shvuah. Next, final thing we're going to learn today is v'amar Rav Onan Amar Shmuel. A guy claimed 2 sewing needles, which is worth nothing. You admitted to one of them, chayav. Then you're obligated. Because although we're learning the whole day that when it comes to coin, when it comes to value, if you're claiming an amount of money, you have to have the claim has to be above $2. But when it comes to kalim, when it comes to useful items, then we say it could be worth anything. So if a guy claimed you owe me 2 pins, 2 needles, and the guy says I owe you 1, you're still chayiv a carbon. You're still chayiv and obligated. Therefore, therefore you're chayiv a carbon. You're chayiv to swear a shvuah by the mitzvahs. Concludes the Gemara. Amar Rapapa. Rapapa said to honor kalim upruta. Let's say the guy claimed that you owe me, let's say, hammers and a penny. And he agreed on the hammers, the kafa b'pruta, and denied the penny. Potter, you potter, and hoide b'pruta the kafa b'kalim. But if let's say he admitted that he owes the penny and denied the hammers, chayiv ich obligated shvuah. Chad karav, chad k'shmuel. So Rapapa liked Rav, and in some cases he liked Shmuel. Chad karav. The first case where he said the guy claimed you owe me hammers and a penny, and he admitted on the hammers and denied the penny. So what was the deny? The denial was 1 cent. So Rav said the denial has to be at least $2 worth. So therefore, it makes perfect sense that you're exempt from a Shmuel Moida B'Miktzas. Concludes the Gemara, B'chadik Shmuel, but he also holds like Shmuel. If the claim was wheat and barley, which is the claim is hammers and a penny, and he was admitted on the penny and denied the hammers, it's still considered a moida b'miktzas. So it's considered a moida b'miktzas because you're denying the hammers, and although you agreed on the penny, you're still considered denying and admitting on partial claim, and therefore you'll be obligated in Shmuel moida b'miktzas. Okay, so we ended Baruch Hashem Daf Mem.
Thank you, Baruch.